And now, it's BoomerLife, lifestyle discussion designed to make your life more engaging, meaningful, and complete. Celebrating the baby boomer generation, this is BoomerLife on CIL 650.
Welcome to BoomerLife on CIL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Thanks for joining us today. So are you where you want to be financially? A well-thought-out plan for your financial future is an integral part of building the life that you want for both yourself and for your family. So on BoomerLife today, we're talking about your financial future with JimeDoyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group Financial Services, Inc. And one of the tough issues that we're going to explore today is planning for children with special needs, as well as addressing some key investment and estate planning challenges and pitfalls that could actually prevent you from fulfilling any or all of your retirement goals. So, Jim, I just want to say first, thanks for being here with us. Now, one of the most important questions that parents of children with special needs might be asking themselves is, what is going to happen to this child when I'm no longer here? What's going to happen to the state of that child? How are they going to be cared for without me? There's a lot of questions that come out of this.
Well, first, I'd like to welcome everyone to the show and thank you all for sharing some of your time with us here today. Joanne, to a large degree, the answer to that question will depend on the steps you take today towards your child's future well-being.
Well, this question, Jim, is just one of the many specialized needs that come into play when planning your personal future. So you want to work with an advisor who specializes in your situation. And Jim, you're really highlighting why someone might choose to work with a certified financial planner like yourself.
Well, thanks, Joanne. You know, many of the things that we're going to be talking about could also apply to your life partner or other loved ones. But special needs children have a special place and require additional planning.
Financial and lifestyle security doesn't just happen by itself. It requires purposeful planning. People can benefit from working with the right financial planner to help address any blind spots that they might have in their financial picture. And I think many of us think that our investment advisor is a financial planner, and it's a rude surprise to find out that they're actually not.
I'd like to extend an offer to those listening. If you don't feel you have enough certainty in the planning you already have put in place for yourself or your special needs child, call me for a second opinion or talk to somebody who has the appropriate training.
Well, you can actually reach Jim at 604-682-5431. So, Jim, back to the original question. If you have a child or children who have special needs, what are some of the key areas that you might like to pay attention to?
The first, one of the first places I'd like to suggest by starting is a frank prognosis of your child's future. Will your child ever be able to earn a living, manage assets, live independently? You can use your evaluation of your answers as a guide to the type of planning you'll need to provide for your child.
Parents worry a lot about future risks. And what would you suggest, Jim, if that you're uncertain about your child's future?
For people with autism who appear to be high functioning, there's a high risk of gradually becoming unable to work. How do you plan for the possibility that you can become unable to work in your 30s or 40s? If, after speaking with your care advocates for your child, you're still uncertain about the prognosis, it's probably best to be conservative in your planning and allow for contingencies.
So what would you suggest could be the next couple of steps in the process? Like, where do you start?
I'd like to suggest review your own financial situation and plan to get that in order. Sometimes the best advice we can offer is to try to add training wheels on mom and dad's planning.
Well, I'm actually a little surprised by that. I thought planning for the special needs child would be priority number one. So what you're saying is get your financial and estate planning in order and then do the planning for your child.
Ever been on an airplane during the pre-flight safety procedures when they talk about the oxygen masks?
Right.
And how they encourage parents to put on their masks first before helping their children. The analogy here is if your kids are relying on you to look after them and something happens to you, how will your kids fare?
It's so true. So, Jim, what other elements of your financial situation should you consider?
You might want to consider, What assets do you have available to provide for your child's future financial needs? Is there anything you could do to accumulate additional assets for your child's care? Ask yourself the same question in terms of if something happened tomorrow or if something happened in the future. How would your answers be different? Planning for contingencies is important.
For younger children, I expect one of the biggest concerns might be living arrangements. So where do you want your child to live after your death, or if you become physically unable to care for your child?
I hear you. Will your child need a guardian, or are you likely to be working with the public trustee's office? The answer to this one depends on the level of pre-planning that you've put in place.
So, Jim, would it be fair to say that people are likely anxious when it comes to taking on this role because it can be all so new to them and they don't completely understand what all their options might be or even what benefits they're entitled to?
For many of the parents we work with, there is often a substantial surprise as to what services their special need child qualifies for as a minor and then as a dependent adult. An awareness of the two groups of government will be useful. There are entitlement programs where eligibility is based on meeting certain requirements, such as age, disability, or blindness. An individual who, for example, meets the required definition of disability is entitled to receive benefits regardless of that individual's financial situation.
So you actually need to know what government benefits are available and what the requirements are to qualify for these benefits. What would be your second one?
Then there's needs-based programs that make it necessary to keep an eye on assets and earnings above stated amounts. What's important here is that improper or careless planning could make your child ineligible for certain benefits.
Well, Jim, so far then we've only been talking about the initial assessment.
Yes. The care and well-being of children, whether they're minors or adults who are mentally, physically, or developmentally challenged, can be greatly enhanced by planning in areas such as legal planning, financial planning, medical planning, and educational planning.
You mean, for example, like when they could they inherit something?
Well, yes, and that can create a significant unintended problem if the planning is not done well.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that planning for children with special needs is a very complex process. I especially appreciate your comment about planning for adult children because eventually children become adults and then the planning responsibilities, well, they don't go away.
One point I'd like to mention early on, when it comes to legal planning and documents, please consider consulting a lawyer with experience in estate planning for families with children with special needs. Amongst the issues they can help address include how your estate will be distributed when you die, who will care for your child with special needs when you're no longer able to do so, and how your estate can be arranged to provide for your child, but not disqualify them from receiving government benefits.
So do you have any advice or ideas of the primary legal items that one might need to look at?
Now, these are just some of the issues, but you might want to start with wills, then guardians, and if your child's condition warrants it, if possible, a power of attorney, medical directives, and lastly, a letter of intent. A letter that serves as a blueprint of what you want for your child's life to be like when you can no longer care for your child.
Okay. You actually mentioned medical planning as part of your initial assessment. Could you go back and expand a little bit on the planning that might be needed there?
How can you best obtain and pay for the specialized medical care your child may require? Who will oversee your child's medical care, and who will oversee your child's future financial needs? Medical directives could also record the treatments an individual wishes to have or not, should someone become unable to make those decisions. Appointing a proxy as an example. Again, this is where good legal advice pays off.
Okay. Jimmy, you've been a financial planner with Investors Group for almost 27 years now. I'm certain that you have firsthand experience in helping families with this very specific need of planning for special needs kids or adults. And I'm sure you've helped families plan for in the past. So do you have any significant examples that you'd like to share with us that might stick out in your mind?
I remember one family we worked with were torn about finding a caretaker to look after their adult child's apartment if their child had a maintenance issue they needed looking after once they weren't here. Who would take on the task? and it's not as easy as you might think.
So if any of our listeners happen to be facing some of the issues that we've been talking about today, and you're curious about getting more advice from Jim, if this sounds like planning that you need help with, or if you have any questions about it, I would urge you to give Jim a phone call, 604-682-5431. So now I have a big question. How do you, Jim, get paid for a service like this?
Oh, the 900-pound elephant in the middle of the table, right?
Well, we have to address it.
I'm glad you asked, actually. I'm paid based on assets I manage on behalf of my firm. I do work with account minimums, and I'd be happy to talk about those should you call. For those who might like, I can be reached at 604-682-5431, or you can find me at JimeDoyle.ca. Okay,
Jim, you mentioned earlier also about a letter of intent describing the future that you want for your child. That's actually new. I'm not sure if I've heard about that before. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
When I work with families that have special needs children, either as minors or adults, and you ask them what would like to see happen if they weren't here, when you live something or live with something every day, you'll know things that others won't. And I'm surprised how often people tell me all the things they'd like to see happen, but it doesn't fit into any nice box. So we encourage them to talk to their lawyers about drafting a letter of intent.
So is something like that legally binding?
This is a great question to ask your lawyer. I don't feel they are, but the letter can provide direction for those who will be caring for your child when you're no longer here. And there's lots to cover, from medical history, including diagnosis, care and support they currently receive or may be eligible for in the future, any special equipment needs, education your child has received, as well as future education you'd like them to receive, living arrangements you'd like to see for your child, employment opportunities, social or behavioral information, dietary information with likes and dislikes, and any religious information as appropriate.
That's a lot of information, Jim. So what sort of lists could actually be helpful in a situation like this?
Well, certainly the names and contact information of anyone involved in your child's life, such as a school contact, caseworker, financial advisor, executor, and guardian. It may be also helpful to have a set of the child's medical records available. And finally, financial guidance, including details on medical insurance and financial resources available.
Parenting a child with special needs has its own very unique sets of joys and challenges, and it can be a daunting task to undertake special needs planning completely on your own.
Listen, there's some groups out there that do this sort of work every day, and there are also some resources available aside from the provincial and federal programs through groups like Inclusion BC and Plan. Because of the specialized nature of special needs planning, it pays to seek out those professionals, lawyers, trust officers, financial advisors who have the experience addressing the unique needs of those families with special needs children.
So, Jim, this has been very insightful. It's also a very good reminder that life is a journey, and like any successful journey, should always include some good planning. You are listening to Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Today, we're speaking with JimeDoyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group. And to learn how Jim can help with your financial future, call him at 604-682-5431, or you can send Jim an email if it's more convenient, jim.doyle@investorsgroup.com. And I just wanted you to know, and a quick reminder, that you could actually join Jim Doyle and his team at a very special seminar that's going to be held at Van Dusen Gardens Wednesday, November 9th. Mark it on your calendar, and it's all about downsizing your home for retirement. And is it worth it or not? I know we've touched on this subject on this show before. Very appropriate for boomers at this stage in their life. So still on the topic of your children, Jim offers insights on some of the ins and outs of disclosing your estate plans to your kids. That's all coming up next on Boomer Life on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.